today. Because I want to hear from him, I'm going to read the last paragraph because I know he's going to talk about this, and he has a wonderful story to share. High Desert Education Service District is a regional support system linking Central Oregon school districts to state and national education resources, minimizing service duplication, preserving local budgets, and providing access to highly specialized programs and cross-sector collaboration. HDESD serves the Ben Lapine, Crook County, Redmond, and sister school districts, including 61 schools and 4 charter schools, over 37,000 students, and over almost 2,000 teachers. Apparently he will be retiring this year, so we want to first thank you for your service, and second, please share.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to be with all of you. I think I was last here maybe 3 years ago, maybe 5, somewhere. Time is not trackable much anymore. This is my 25th year and last year working at HDESD, and I'm privileged to share with you a little bit about my personal journey, but most importantly what HDESD is and does, and perhaps provide some opportunity for any questions you might have. So, as the I've been superintendent for, this is my 7th year, and I started out as an autism specialist. I was hired in 1999. Previously I had been a teacher in the Seattle area and up in Alaska, and after being in Alaska for 5 years, I had an amazing job. I would fly to a different village every week that had children with disabilities and consult there. And took a year off, wandered around the world, and a friend of mine who I had come to visit in Bend a couple times to go skiing said, there's a job for an autism specialist, and can I put your name in? And so when I landed back in the US after being overseas for a year, I had a job in a place I had visited twice, and started out providing autism services. We expanded at that point from 2 autism specialists to 3. This is in 1999. We now have 12. Autism has expanded immensely in those 25 years, and that's another discussion for another time, but just speaking to what has happened over these years. After that, I started our assistive technology program, which is technology for children with disabilities. Did that for a number of years. It's grown up to quite a bit in our region as well. And then became an administrator, got my doctorate, and was the special ed director for 8 years. And took another year off, wandered around the world for a little bit, and when I came back, decided to look at other opportunities in leadership, became the deputy superintendent for about 5 years, and as I said, I've been superintendent for 7 years now. My current assistant superintendent likes to say they ran out of jobs for me, so they made me superintendent. And we're now out of jobs for me. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about ESD. Why are we? And a quick history lesson. First of all, actually, this is the audience participation part. Can't take the teacher out of me. What happened on February 14th, 1859? Stay tuned. Today is Oregon's birthday. And we have friends who actually don't celebrate Valentine's Day, they celebrate Oregon's birthday on February 14th. And so, at that time, when Oregon became a state, 33rd state, it was in the middle of what was called the Common School Movement. The Common School Movement, before about 1840, the idea of governments actually setting up free schools with taxpayer dollars was a pretty foreign concept. It started in Massachusetts, and then heard the name Horace Mann. He was in charge of education for the state of Massachusetts, and he started a countrywide common school movement. And Oregon came to be a state while that was happening, and it was very much up to the states to determine what public education should look like. And so it's written into our Constitution that one of the purposes of the state of Oregon is to provide public education. how do you do that in this brand new state? And what they did was set up county school districts, county school units they were called at the time. And these county school units were charged with, if you have enough kids in a geographical area, that parents or folks from that region would come to an elected county superintendent and say, we think we're ready for a school here, how do we do it? And that person would say, they take out a map and say, well, let's make a little school district out of you, and here's how you go about hiring a teacher, here's how you, if you don't have a building, here's how you do it, if you need information about textbooks and things of that sort, here's how it happens. And so that is how schools were set up in the state of Oregon. And at one point, we had 2,400 school districts. So all these little, and as you look around here and you see little school buildings, most of them were individual districts at one point in time. And over the years have consolidated. And this probably isn't the forum for it. I would argue 197 school districts is still way too many. But as compared to 2,400, we've gone in the right direction in terms of consolidation. Those county school units are the precursors of ESDs. So we've actually been around longer than school districts. We were set up to help create what it is that the region needed. By the 1960s, we pretty much had more or less defined where all the school districts should be. And so the role of what then were changed to names of IEDs, Independent Education Districts, they were charged more with, okay, support those districts. What is it they need in terms of curricula, in terms of library resources, in terms of what would soon become special education? Give them support so that they're successful. And the name change, 1978, was when the state changed them to ESDs, and Education Service Districts, and that came because of the federal Public Law 94-142, which is the special education law. And at that point, they said, ESDs, you've got to help all these school districts figure out how to support children with disabilities. Before 1977, there was no requirement that districts serve children with disabilities. And at that point, it became law, and they said, ESDs, you got to help them out. And so that became a big focus for us. At that point, we were Deschutes ESD, and Crook was still a county unit. In the early 90s, they said, we don't need, there are about 5 county units left. We don't need those anymore, and so there was some more consolidation that went on there. It became Crook Deschutes ESD. We changed our name in 2004 to High Desert ESD. So we are primarily here for Crook and Deschutes counties, and yet we provide services to 12 other counties as well. So our focus is on those 2 counties, but if we provide something that another ESD doesn't, such as attorney services, then districts in other counties can purchase those. So for example, 509J, Madras Jefferson County School District in Madras, purchases our attorney services, purchases a lot of our special ed services, purchases support from us to help them with their career technical education work. In addition, we get state contracts to provide services for areas that are, there are fewer of them than ESDs. So for example, we provide all of the early childhood special education, 0 to 5 special education, for 7 counties in Central Oregon. So in addition to Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson, we also provide Harney County and what is North Central ESD, which is Sherman, Wheeler, and Gillum counties. For that particular grant. For the CTE grant, Career Technical Ed, that is Columbia Gorge, Jefferson, High Desert, and Lake, and Klamath. So the state likes to divide us up into all different ways and say, who wants to take this one? If it's in our region, we try to raise our hand the highest and say, we think we can take that on, and we serve districts in those counties for those types of things. But our core area is Crook and Deschutes counties. That's a pretty quick and a lot of information on history. Any questions about our history and where we came from?
I think you said 1977 was when schools were required to serve special ed students.
That's right.
What became of them before that?
Great question. So 1975 was actually when the law was passed. It had to be implemented in 77. Okay. Before that time, it was up to individual states, and states did different things. And so, for example, the Oregon School for the Blind and Oregon School for the Deaf have been around for over 100 years. Actually, OSB is now gone. But that was for children specifically with sensory disabilities. Many states had systems like that. For children with more intellectual disabilities, there were often co-ops. There were places where in a large region there might be children with Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or other types of intellectual disabilities who might get that as an opportunity, but there was no requirement. And so I had a twin brother who was born in 1966 with, so was I. He was born with cerebral palsy and intellectual disabilities and vision impairments. There were no services in New Hampshire at that time. And so at age 2.5, my parents were convinced by their doctors to put him in a nursing home, and he died when we were 4. And today that just isn't what we do because we have early intervention, early childhood special education. And he would have been 11 before he had a right to an education. So I would have been in 6th grade before he had a right to an education, 5th grade. So in our lifetimes, it's been true.
New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
I'll talk to you after.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yes.
You may have said this. Is mental health or mental health concerns considered
Under special
service
education?
As under special education.
So it is a service that HDESD provides. Mental health per se is not an eligibility criteria for special education. But other health impaired, sometimes kids, for example, with ADD and ADHD fall under that. Usually we're looking more at accommodations for children with mental health needs. And so that actually is a different law. It's called the 504, Section 504 of the Disabilities Act of '73. That one makes accommodations within schools, because often children with special needs intellectually don't need specially designed instruction. They need accommodations. They need supports so that they can then learn. So no, it isn't called out explicitly, but there are ways for children who do need specially designed instruction to still access it if they have mental health needs. Well, I'll keep going. I have till 3:30, right? I want you to meet Henry. Henry was not speaking at age 3, and then 3.5, and 4, and parents were getting a little concerned by that. And so we have an evaluation team that if a pediatrician or a parent or anyone has concerns about a child 0 to 5, we go through an evaluation and found that Henry indeed had a language disorder, communication disorder. And this picture was taken during the pandemic. He is now in 1st grade. And he was getting services on the computer during the pandemic as we were all in lockdown, and from speech language pathologists. And he is one of our great stories. About 30% of our children who receive early childhood special ed do not need special ed by the time they get to kindergarten. So in the case of articulation, in the case of a language delay, just an intensive amount of support at age 3 and 4. By the time they get to kindergarten, they never are identified in special ed again. 60% plus of our kids do continue to need special education, and particularly if you're deaf or blind, you're going to need that for the rest of certainly your education career. But Henry is an example of a kiddo who is now not in special ed. He is in our public schools and doing great as a result of that. So that's one of the things that we're proud of being able to do. So we're not just about special education. We actually have about 50 different programs under HDESD. And so while, because of 1977's special ed law, that became a big focus for a while, in the last 20 years, we've expanded much beyond that. And so, for example, we get the state contract for our region for migrant education. Migrant education is set up by the federal government for children of migrant workers. And if you think about it, migrant workers move according to where the work is. And so that's not dependent on the school year. So they might be in California at the beginning of the year, move up to Oregon, maybe through fruit picking, farther north, and then move back down as it gets getting colder. And those kids still need an education during that. And our Migrant Ed program finds them, hopefully has heard from where they were before, from their Migrant Ed program, hey, they're headed your way to work up in your region for a period of time. And then as we hear they're ready to go north or south, that we let them know, those school districts know, hey, this family is going down there. We provide extra support, extra tutoring, and try to make those transitions. Probably not something you thought a lot about in terms of needing that. Yeah.
Is there a database where you can like, okay, this is kind of how they were performing here, and then now we know they're here, or is there a way for you to track that?
Yeah, the feds have made this, surprising words that's come out of my mouth, made this easier for us. And so there's a federal database that does support this. And there also are, so Jefferson County School District has a lot more Migrant Ed students than some of our other regions. There are certain school districts that we know we tend to get families from and tend to go to. And so there's that linkage as well. Yeah. So that's an example. And then I brought up that because our Children's Forest of Central Oregon, which is a 501c3 unto itself, but is also under High Desert ESD. So it has its own mission of trying to get children outside of the four walls of a classroom to also get an education. And so that they have nonprofit status unto their own, but all of their employees are High Desert ESD employees. We started the program, they went off to get 501c3 status. They may break off at some point, or they may stay under us at some point. They set up a special program for our Migrant Ed program to get children outside more. And so this is an example of that. And a story of how two of our programs link together pretty well. High School Equivalency Program is another federal grant that is for folks who do not have their GED and haven't tried to get it in the US because English is not their first language. You can take the GED in Spanish and in other languages as well. And so, but we had nothing to support folks in Central Oregon. And so the HEP program is for young adults and adults to be able to access their GED in Spanish. So actually learn in Spanish and take the GED in Spanish. We started the grant 5 years ago, and at that time COCC wasn't in a place to do that. And they're the more logical entity to take this on under their Adult Basic Ed program. So the grant ends on June 30th. Just talked with them yesterday. They have submitted the grant. We have given full support saying this should move from us to them. And we hope that they will get it to continue this program. So also talking here about how we are kind of a conduit for education, birth to 5, up through higher ed, and obviously K-12 in between. And these are folks who did graduate that first year. We've had over 100 folks graduate from this. Started during the pandemic, which was a tough time to start, or just before, and has been very successful. So some numbers were brought up before. Our 4 school districts plus, mentioned a whole lot of other school districts that we serve, or counties, but those are our 4 school districts. We have over 33,000, that's kind of in our tri-county area. When you count the kids, do you count entire districts' kids if they get attorney services? Hard to say how many kids we touch, but in that general range. And brought up before, children with special needs is a core amount of our services. We provide all the occupational and physical therapists to all the school districts in the region. We provide all of the teachers of the deaf, hard of hearing, and teachers of the vision impaired. And those are the best examples of why an ESD should exist. It doesn't make, if there's one blind student who lives in Sisters, it doesn't make sense for Sisters School District to have to figure out, how do I find someone who's certified to teach a child who's blind? And by the way, I don't need 1.0 FTE. I don't need a whole teacher. I need about 0.2 of them because our other folks can take care of other supports for this child. So how do I go do that? And rather than have every district try to figure that out, High Desert ESD hires 4 teachers of the vision impaired for 7 counties. There are only about 50 children who meet that in those 7 counties. 56, I think, is our current number. So it's not a very high incidence disability. But those kids have special needs, unique needs, and they have a right to that added level of support. And so that's one of the things that we're able to do. And these other types of of services as well. Any questions about any of these? Yeah?
Talk to us a little about early intervention and how that works and what that really means
Yeah.
for a family that just had a child.
Yep. So early intervention is 0 to 3, and then 3 to 5 is early childhood special education. Early intervention is a child is born, and in some cases it might be obvious at birth. A child with Down syndrome, for example, or a child who is blind might be discoverable right away. Right away, we're told about them, and we get our specialists there, wrapping around that family. And the idea in most states is actually just to be a case manager, just to say, okay, here's where you could go find occupational therapy if your child needs it. Here's where you could go find a speech pathologist, see you at age 3. That is all that's required federally. Oregon, something I'm quite proud of in Oregon, has a seamless system 0 to 5, and says we're going to provide services starting at birth, and through an education lens, and with the spirit of parents are a child's first teacher. And how do we give in 0 to 3 those parents the supports to be able to feel comfortable being the teacher as well as parent for their child? And by age 3, once we move into early childhood special ed, we have classrooms. And so we have a couple of classrooms at Hugh Hartman. We have the Manzanita building, which we own, which is kind of the other side of the highway from the hospital up here in Redmond. We have the Alice Hatch Center, we have a Lapine Center, we have a Madras Center, we have a Prineville Center. So for 3 to 5-year-olds, we bring them to us. But 0 to 3 is in the home, in their natural environments. How do we give parents the support they need for that child to thrive as much as we can? Did I hit on it?
Yes, a lot of times parents don't really know that they have a child with a disability,
That's right.
if they're having problems hearing,
Yep.
if they're having problems learning how to speak.
Yep. Exactly. So
Don't know where to go.
speech. Yep. Exactly. And so we rely a lot on pediatricians and getting the word out about that. And another thing our folks do is there's a lot of grief that comes with realizing that the child might not have been exactly what you thought. And there's a great essay out there by a parent of a child with Down syndrome about that said, "Welcome to Denmark." And it was about the family that had always wanted to go to Paris and was ready to go to Paris, and the plane landed in Denmark. And there are wonderful things in Denmark, but they really wanted to go to Paris. And it's we use things like that with parents to say, it's okay, and it's okay to be sad too. To grieve. Yeah.
I know a 14-year-old boy goes to school in Bend, and he has Down syndrome. How do they determine, maybe you mentioned this on the high school equivalents, how do they determine what grade he's in? I think they have him in grade 4.
So, yeah, good question. Yeah, so what we try to do with children is keep them with their same age peers in terms of the social aspect. But in terms of what they're learning, it's going to be different than the kids who are their same age. And so it's very individualized. And in fact, when you get into special education, you have what's called an IEP, which is an individualized education program plan. And so that particular child has his own IEP that is speaking to where he is, which Down syndrome by itself is not a determinant of outcome. That is that you've probably seen ads with children with Down syndrome, young adults with Down syndrome, who are actors, who are having very productive lives, and we have children with very significant intellectual disabilities who need a whole lot of support with Down syndrome. So it's going to be individualized is the answer.
So it's where they're at, but it's also where they can be.
Absolutely.
Right,
The whole
that'd be-
idea of the IEP is
Yeah.
about how do we help them to learn, help them to grow. Yeah. Closer to their goals, and they're individualized. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, would what you just said there apply to the autism
Yeah.
spectrum?
It does.
I have a niece who went to public school, but she started at Gateway Academy Special One when she went to high school.
Yep. Yep. So same thing. Any disability, a child will have an individualized education plan, and will have supports around their unique needs. Some children might need an occupational therapist, others may not. A speech pathologist, and others may not. Yep.
just a matter of history. Before the public system got involved with the needy individuals with disabilities, we call them now.
Yep.
The Opportunity Foundation of Central Oregon was formed in 1965, and John Halstead, a past president of Kiwanis, was the original director of that organization. And through Kiwanis, in Prineville and Madras and here specifically, Bend, and I'm not positive about sisters, but the Central Oregon group of Kiwanians were really fundamental in building structures, as one of the guests, providing donations, fundraising, all those activities that were required to put that on the ground. So we can take a moment of pride just to cover that issue, because these individuals were not addressed at all in any group way until the foundation in Redmond was formed.
Great
We
example.
took great part of that. John was a past president, or became president.
So I am aware of the time, believe it or not. I did want to just very briefly say, under school improvement, we do a lot of things. We provide all the driver's ed. We provide all of the substitute teachers in Central Oregon. We have about 1,000 of them for the entire region. We provide interpreting and translation, mentioned by Grenade before. Crisis response team, if there's a death at a school, we swoop in with counselors and support that entire community. It doesn't have to be a death, but that's very common. That's a common reason you do it. It's not common. So lots of things that, again, we want our school districts to be focused on what children are there to learn, and we try to provide those additional ancillary supports. Administrative supports, technology supports, and community-based organizations that also fall under us. We are here to improve student outcomes with excellence, equity, and efficiency, and that's who we are.
So the best thing you do is teach driver's ed.
Yep.
In this weather.
You know, the data on driver's ed is significant in terms of decreased number of certainly accidents, but also
And
deaths.
it's better that you teach them than
Absolutely.
we teach them. They don't believe us.
Is there a major, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna have Judith and Aiden come up,
Sure.
when we take your picture.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask real quickly, drug education?
Drug
Is that
education,
still-
did you
Is
say?
there still active drug education programs in schools?
Yep, so through health curriculum it is required. That is not something districts have asked us to do, but yes, it does still exist in the health curriculum.
Your annual budget,
About $78 million.
78.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. We have about 350 full employees, not including obviously the 1,000 subs who are time-sheeted employees. The nice thing about being a sub is you can look up in the morning and say, yeah, I'm not going to work today. And so we call them time-sheeted employees. Our driver's ed instructors are time-sheeted. So we actually have close to about 1,500 employees when you pull everyone in.
Thank you.
And Aiden, would you like to say something before we finish up our meeting today?
Hi everyone, I'm Manuel Moss. I'm Yuda's partner for Mr. and Mrs. RHS. And she already spoke, I'm a little late. I have schooling now. But, but I want to think, I think she probably explained it. So I guess I'll just piggyback off what she said, and I just want to say, if you do consider donations or want to help out this family in any way, I want to personally say thank you, and that you all are representing Redmond in our goal of helping our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if you'll come in, we're going to take a quick picture. And this is for you, Paul. This is just a token of appreciation for you taking your time today, and happy retirement.
Thank you.
Why don't we all get in for a little picture?
All right, here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Aiden, thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to be excited to see you at the end of the month, too, for our Inner Club. And in honor of Valentine's Day, love does not make the world go round. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile. Franklin Jones. What?